All right, module 5. So we're working our way around the horn, and today it's going to be about competitive advantage, firm performance, and with some emphasis on business models. So I've already alluded to competitive advantage a number of times this semester, and we're going to do a big time deep dive into it today. So our friend Warren Buffett from Berkshire Hathaway calls your competitive advantage your moat. And the metaphor for the moat is that if you got a moat that's very wide and very deep, meaning full of water, and it keeps your rivals from being able to get at your business. And so competitive advantage is really as the strategic advantage a brand has over its rivals. And achieving competitive advantage strengthens and positions a business better within its competitive environment. So competitive advantage is really important. And if you have a competitive advantage, the world changes. And so you've got to constantly be measuring how wide and how deep your moat is. And when a company gets very arrogant and they think that they're better than everybody without having to go into the gym every day and working out, that's when a moat gets filled up with sand and muck and all sorts of stuff, and they lose their competitive advantage. But it's important for it to be sustainable. It's important for it to constantly be improved, and fundamentally goes back to creating superior value for your customers. And Michael Porter, who is considered to be the father of strategy, modern day strategy, will tell you it's not necessarily about beating your rivals, even though that could be the outcome, but it's about creating value. And whatever you do that becomes your source of competitive advantage will show up in your P&L. It should show up in your P&L. And if it doesn't show up in your P&L, profit and loss statement, then you're doing something wrong. You think it's a creative advantage, but it's really not. Or you haven't perfected your competitive advantage, or you haven't, if your competitive advantage is around being highly different, then that means you've got to add more cost to creating the product or service. You got to make sure those costs are built into what you're charging your customers, so you get a premium for it. So the financial component of the business model generates consistent profits. Whatever your industry is that you operate in, and whatever your brand that you operate in. And so today our story is about competitive advantage and looking at how organizations will try to compete. So if you look at our arena in Richmond, this is not all of the burger restaurants or burger brands, but it's a big portion of them. Not everyone is positioned the same. You have some similarities. I would say Burger King and McDonald's are positioned relatively equally or relatively closely. There's still value chain differences, but they're if I were to think about who's the Coke and Pepsi, I would think it's McDonald's and Burger King. But you got Hardee's in there, and of course you have Sonic in there, and you got Wendy's in there. You got Dairy Queen. Dairy Queen just opened up near me, and then the new entrant, which is Habit. Then you got your sit downs, which is Boulevard Burger and Brew and Burger Batch, and Carytown Burgers and Fries, and I'm not saying sit down. They all have sit down, but these are, you have a server who comes to your table and takes the order. So, and these are all your options, right? If you want a burger. And so the value creation component then is how you personally define it. Are you willing to go into Burger Batch and get a New Zealand inspired experience? So it's the burger itself, the protein itself. It's very unique in terms of the fries and the different condiments that are available for you to use in the place of traditional ketchup. It's the fact that you can get vodka from New Zealand, and I can go on and on. So Burger Batch is just a very unique dining experience, but you're going to pay for it. So if you go in yourself and you just get a little bit of fries and a burger and a iced tea, I mean, you probably still pay about $20, something like that. If you start loading in the alcohol, then you're all of a sudden gone up to $30. And then you got to leave a tip, 15, 20% tip, etc. So when we think about Burger Batch, the experience of Burger Batch is going to be very different from Five Guys. They're both burgers, and they both have other things that you can get, but they're just going to be positioned different. And so when we think about the competitive advantage of Burger Batch and the competitive advantage of Five Guys, it goes back to how are they trying to position themselves? What are the promises of the brand? And then what become their sources of competitive advantage? And that fundamentally then is an important consideration. So we think about Five Guys, we think about the idea that it's handcrafted. So that's the customization component. And the fact that it's very high quality ingredients. So the food itself is going to be very, very high quality. And the atmosphere is if you choose to go in, now that they have delivery, but if you choose to go in, it's a high energy, comfortable atmosphere, let's say. And so versus the McDonald's that we've talked about, McDonald's is about speed, fast. It's about affordability, and it's about convenience. So there are a lot more McDonald's around town than there are Five Guys. And so even though Five Guys is growing geographically, there's still a lot more McDonald's. So what become the sources of competitive advantage? So if we think about Five Guys, right, a source of competitive advantage, then if you're going to get fresh ingredients and fresh food, and if you listen to the podcast on Five Guys, the founder will tell you that it boils down to, and I love the way he says potatoes. He calls them potatoes. It's where they get their potatoes, and it's where they get their ground beef. It's where they get all of the ingredients. And oh, by the way, we call that the value chain elements, to be able to create a wonderful, experience. And that ability around the cold chain, so sourcing fresh ingredients, becomes a source of their competitive advantage. So if you think about the brand promises in terms of Five Guys, right? Customization, high quality products in a high energy, fun atmosphere. What creates those three things? What's behind the scenes that you and me as a customer, that oftentimes we don't see? So all that stuff. And when the podcast went on and I listened to the founder of Five Guys, he talked about his kids, of course, and that each one of his kids has a different area of responsibility. And so you have these strength areas that become a source of competitive advantage. but we cannot forget the fact that the brand's got to be clear about who it is and what it's about and its identity. So once again, when we talk in terms of the essence of a high performing brand, it's about what you're trying to accomplish in terms of mission, the purpose. It's about the promises, the unique promises that we've talked about just now with Five Guys, high quality products, customization, high energy atmosphere. For Chick-fil-A, it's fast and friendly. It's great, consistent tasting food, family atmosphere. I wouldn't say Five Guys is a family atmosphere, or they don't maintain necessarily a family philosophy. That's not to say that you can't bring your kids in there, so you can bring your kids. But Five Guys has a fairly more disciplined approach to family, of which then might turn people off. There are people who don't like Chick-fil-A because of their philosophy around family. Then you have your values, the fundamental beliefs of the brand. Then you have your clues, which is how the brand expresses itself regularly and consistently. And there's three clues: humanic clues, mechanic clues, and functional clues. Humanic are the voice, the sound of the people. That's the culture. Mechanic are the sight, sounds, and smells of the experience. And then the functional is the actual quality, the taste of the or the quality of the product itself. So when we think about Patagonia, the functional side of their clues is how the actual garments, the apparel, are fabricated, and the fact that they're very durable and last for a long time. And then the community are the people who are emotionally connected to your brand and to your success. So you first have to start, guys, with identity to know, how you're trying to position yourself. So Porter he came up with 5 forces model. Remember that? That was from chapter 3. That's an important concept. Power of suppliers, power of buyers, threat of substitution, threat of new entrants, intensity of rivalry. So Porter says when you look at an industry and you're trying to figure out if you want to invest in it or get out of it, look at it from those 5 forces standpoint. His model of competitive advantage is what we call positioning model. And what Porter has said is that you have 5 potential ways to position yourself as a brand. And those 5 ways really speak to, on the vertical, which is how broad is your target market or your buyers. And so that could actually mean, do you have a broad range of buyers, and are your products and services that appeal to them, are they broad, or is your brand really narrow? So if you think about a brand that's just about shoes, they don't sell anything other than shoes. But then you look at a brand like a Target store, they've got shoes and they got jeans and they got Paw Patrol and they got dog food and cat food and candy and all sorts of stuff. So the vertical is about how broad are you, and then the horizontal axis at the top is on the right side, how differentiated are you? So meaning, are you plugging in elements of the value chain that are really different, that differentiate itself from your competition? And the farther right you go on that, so if you look at differentiation, you go all the way to the end of the boxes there, that means you're highly differentiated. And it also means that you're having to put in a lot of cost to make it that way. So you should get a premium of whatever you're selling, whatever it's a product or service. On the left side, that's about being cost focused. So if you think about how you go to market, the compelling side of the equation is the fact that you've been able to figure out how to sell your product or service at a much lower price than the competition. And so what Porter says is, are you going to be differentiated? Are you going to be lower cost? And if you're going to be differentiated, are you going to have a broad market? Are you going to have a narrow or focused market? Or are you going to be low cost? And are you going to be focused? Or are you going to be, broad or overall low cost? And then in the middle, you have what we call best value. And so if you've ever studied, Greek and Roman mythology, there's this story around the Roman god Janus, who's pictured looking 2 separate ways, looking 2 opposite ways. Doesn't mean two-faced. It doesn't mean Janus is two-faced. It means that Janus is able to navigate two seemingly contradictory concepts coexisting at the same time. So that means you can provide high quality while you're able to deliver affordability as well. So that's what we call affordable luxury, best value. And so it's very hard to be in the center, that best value strategy. Not a lot of brands can get away with it. And we'll talk more about some of them in a few minutes. So focus differentiated is when you are operating in a narrow way in the fact that you're highly differentiated. Broad differentiated is you're broader in terms of your target appeal, but you're going to be differentiated. Overall low cost is you're going to have a broad appeal, but you're going to be low cost. And then focus low cost is very narrow focused, and you're going to have a low cost appeal. And that best value is really where you're able to almost get the best of two worlds. You're able to get affordable products while they're going to be in a very high service or high quality, however you choose to differentiate. So if we were able to put this model to work and how it actually operates, if we were to look at the bottom right, narrow, differentiated, that's our friends at Fresh Market, if you've ever been in there. It could also be Elwood Thompson, right? It could also be Tom Leonard's. And so these are in just about every city's got an organic health, highly differentiated brand, local brand that operates in that city that oftentimes has a very, very loyal following. On the top, you see our friends at Whole Food. You could also say this is Wegmans. You could say this is Publix. My old company, Ukrop's, operated up there. It's going to be differentiated. And Whole Foods is appealing more and more to a broad range of buyers. When Whole Foods first came out, it was just the organic crowd who would come in there. But as Whole Foods has evolved, especially now that they were purchased by Amazon, if you go into a Whole Foods now, you see old, young, male, female, black, white. You see just huge diversity in their stores. And yes, they're going to be rather expensive, and they were able to capture the nickname whole paycheck. And so that's the right side. So you got Wegmans is going after it, Whole Foods is going after it, Publix is going after it. I would say Kroger is really farther to the left. They're still in that box. Kroger would like to be where Trader Joe's is, but I'm not going to give them that space. And Kroger just does it in a very, very different way. But Kroger does, they have their coupons and their card-based marketing program, but I would actually put Kroger up in the top right as well, but closer to the middle. And then you got our friends at Walmart, without question, are the leader in this segment. I would put Food Lion in that top left box, but they're going to be farther down because they're not as broad as Walmart is. What's interesting about Walmart is psychographically, Walmart used to only appeal to a customer who was very focused on price. And what they've been doing over the past 5 years is expanding that. So when I'm up in Boston, I do my market tours and I go into the Walmart up there. I see Mercedes in the parking lot. I see Lexus in the parking lot, Infinity's in the parking lot. So what we see happening is that some people are willing to what we call trade down. I don't say that in a negative way, trade down to price in order to live better. So, and that's what Walmart's value proposition is, right? Save money, live better. So save money, and living, to me, living better might mean I get to drive a Mercedes. So I'm saving $200 a month shopping at a Walmart, and And by that, I can tag that onto what a normal car payment would be. So I get to drive a Mercedes, or I get to have a boat, maybe, or I get to go to Disney every year with my family. The bottom left is interesting because our German supermarket chains, Lidl and Aldi, made the decision that the bottom left was the weakest quadrant of this model. And of course, that's where Dollar General was operating, Family Dollar, Dollar Tree. And so those two brands said, we can come in and kick some butt in that category, in that area. So they came in, and Aldi has invested over they're planning on it, 5 billion in the market, and they want to get to the number 3 position. Walmart's number 1, Kroger's number 2, Aldi wants to be number 3. So Aldi and Lidl have moved in there. Now, Trader Joe's is the real interesting concept because Trader Joe's has a very loyal following. They do it through private label, but their private label are very high quality and very unique, and they've got a hard standard for what they're able to keep in there from a private label. If the products don't generate a return and amount of sales volume that they need, boom, they'll knock them out and bring something in fairly quickly. Trader Joe's is actually a sibling to Aldi. They come from Germany, and Aldi Nord. There's 2 Aldis. Aldi Nord, it's 2 brothers, I think, ended up coming into the United States as Trader Joe's. They actually did an acquisition out of California, and they scaled Trader Joe's. Aldi Süd came in as Aldi. So, and they both operate here in the Richmond area. And what we know is Trader Joe's only has 2 locations here, where Aldi has many more than that. Trader Joe's just has a different growth strategy geographically than the way Aldi's wants it. I would also tell you guys that Target is right there where Trader Joe's is. Target is a really interesting brand, and we've already talked about it a lot. And they're trying to do it with private label too. So what we see happening is Trader Joe's does it with private label. Target does it with private label, but it's a high quality private label that really becomes their own. They control the manufacturing relationship. They don't own manufacturing. Remember that. They don't own it, but they control it. And so Aldi, I would still put in the bottom left, but the more I go into Aldi, the more I realize they're really trying to improve the quality of their products. 2 years, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, if you came back and sat in this class, I might tell you that Aldi now has made it to the center. Lidl wants to go there too, but the Lidl doesn't have their operational excellence stuff down yet. So I don't even think they're close to that middle, even though Aldi really has a pretty good loyal following with the millennial generation. So these are, this is the way brands try to position. And so no matter what your industry, you start to look at how you position. And so this is not just a theoretical model. I mean, when I do brand work with my clients, we use this as a way to understand how they should or where they're positioned, and then do they want to reposition in the marketplace. And we'll talk more about that later on. So in the supermarket industry, Hungry Root is a new entrant. It's an online new entrant. And what's going to be interesting with Instacart, who are now, have their strategic alliances with the Wegmans and the Publix, et cetera, they're starting to build their own fulfillment centers. And so will there be a day when Instacart basically tells Wegmans to go, take a hoot, and we're going to start offering groceries ourselves and delivery? It's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the supermarket industry over the next several years. So Hungry Root is a new entrant, and I haven't quite figured out where they're positioning themselves here. Anybody who comes in online, not everybody, but a lot of people are trying to position themselves here. But it really goes back to, the quality of the products that you see right here before you. You can't be in the middle unless the quality of your products, or there's another unique feature other than price. There's got to be an affordability to the product, but it's got to be either really great service or very unique products or something along those lines. So when we think about, guys, competitive advantage, the questions that we need to ask: why does a customer buy the product or service from you? What is it that they're looking for? When you go into Wegmans to shop, what is it that Wegmans has that you want to have? So the way Wegmans approaches it, even though they're not a blue ocean, which is the best value, we'll talk more about that in a sec, even though Wegmans, has private label, their private label is very good quality. Their private label specialty peanuts is made by one of my clients, Hubs Peanuts, that has a very, very high quality position. So, but what is it when you go into Wegmans? You really are looking for their produce and your value add. Now you go in there to Wegmans, you want to get their breads, maybe their cookies, their prepared foods, their seafood, their value added produce, which are all very expensive. But what they are trying to do is keep you as a consumer from only buying those things. And so they heavy on private label in the center store. So rather than going to Walmart and buying AHA, they're going to offer AHA at a price maybe not exactly as cheap as Walmart, but close to it. So every brand is trying to figure all these out. What is it about us that our customers really like and is the reason they come to us? What are your core competencies? I'll talk about core competencies in a sec, that lead to competitive advantage. How do your core competencies, and how does your competitive advantage compare with the industry and the environment? So we think of that top right, remember, Whole Foods is up there, Wegmans is up there, and Publix is up there. So how do they differ with one another? What is it that creates more uniqueness for them? Can we create multiple sources of competitive advantage? You should be able to do that. How do we align the onstage with the customer see, the customer experience, with the backstage capabilities? And then what is the shelf life of our competitive advantage? Meaning, we go back to that moat. Just because that moat's wide and deep doesn't mean it's always going to be wide and deep. Why is that? The reason is the world's always changing, and some bit of new technology is going to come in. Something's going to change. Maybe a new entrant comes in that has a really cool model. Think again, BlackBerry was a true first mover into smartphones back in the late 90s. They dominated the market for about 8-9 years until Android and Apple came in, and it just quickly, the moat for BlackBerry just was almost sucked dry, and BlackBerry got very arrogant. So they demonstrated hubris, and as a result, weren't able to keep up with those two brands. So the whole idea around competitive advantage is then, you have a build-up period. You're digging that moat, you're making it wide, and then you come up with processes to, whether it's in supply chain, how you buy, if you're Five Guys, how you buy your ground beef, how you buy your potatoes, right? How you buy your tomatoes. So that's the supply chain excellence. So there's a built-up period of time that you have, and so if you do it really good, that's gonna create a competitive advantage. Now, once again, you have a benefit period of time. This is the shelf life that I referenced a few minutes ago. And so how big is it? What's the size of your competitive advantage achieved, and should be reflected in your P&L. And so you're starting to get a return on that investment. And then a new entrant comes in to your market. And so the new entrant does something as good as you, maybe even better, but they do it significantly cheaper, or enough, the savings that you would achieve by going with a new entrant is big enough for you to say, Five Guys, I love you, but now I'm going to go to In-N-Out Burger. So moves by rivals reduces your competitive advantage, and that's just the way it is. And so what you got to do is start digging again. You got to start widening your moat again. You got to start measuring it again. You got to really have a buildup period again. But what happens is when you start losing your competitive advantage, then your customers start to question you. What's going on? Why are they dropping? What's happening with them? So if you look at the center, around performance rewards, it's satisfaction, it's loyalty, it's profits, and then that turns to your sources of advantage, and then your superior assets, superior capabilities, which give you advantage, and that in itself creates barriers to imitation. Because if you have a great competitive advantage, then it's going to be hard for people to copy you. And that's why we see so many lawsuits in the world of technology, because IP, it becomes a source of competitive advantage. So design around software, or in some cases hardware, becomes a source of competitive advantage. And if you're Apple and you see something great that Android does, you may want to copy it without getting sued, but you get a little too close, and so Android sues you, or whoever, Samsung sues you. And there have been a lot of lawsuits back and forth between Apple and Samsung. As a matter of fact, for every iPhone sold, a percentage of what you and I pay for an iPhone goes to Samsung for some IP that Samsung had that Apple tried to replicate, and was Samsung sued them and then ended up having to pay a royalty of sorts. So your competitive dynamics erode, and then you got to reinvest in renewal. So we go back then, question around what's keeping Aldi from being in the middle currently. Alyssa, I would say what's keeping Aldi from being in the middle is right now, or even Lidl from being in the middle. I would say for Lidl, it's execution. And for Aldi, I think it's they're not quite there in terms of the unique products that they have from a quality standpoint. And I would say, I go into Aldi's now, I would say the category of their breads, baked goods is I would say decent, not great. Their wines are good, but not great. So I think what they need to do is elevate, let's say just a scale of 1 to 10. If 10 was the highest that you could be, great. I think Aldi is probably 6 or 7 on many of their private label, and they just need to bring it up a little bit more and prove it to, people that they're worthy of being in that center space. But I believe that they will eventually get there. I think part of the headwinds of Aldi is just a little bit of their brand perception, how people perceive the brand. And Trader Joe's has done a great job from a design standpoint, from a culture standpoint. And so I do think Aldi has the potential to get there, but they're just not there yet. So we think about competing then, and here's what's going on is, let's say you go to do a wash and you need Tide laundry detergent, and you go, okay, I need Tide, where am I going to go get Tide? Well, gosh, I mean, you could go into Publix, you can go to Food Lion, you can go to Walmart, you can go into Wegmans, you can go into Publix, you can go to Home Depot, you can go to Lowe's, you can go into CVS, you can go into Walgreens. So resource similarity is actually, to extent that the firm's tangible and intangible resources are comparable. Now, Tide is a tangible resource. It's an absolute tangible resource. I, as a strategy consultant, are an intangible resource. So I work with about 15, 20 companies a year. And they with one technology consulting firm, UDIG. I'll just tell you who it is. Wonderful firm here in town. And I won't work with any of UDIG's competitors here in town. Now, if somebody in the technology consulting space from California called me up, I'd certainly consider about it. But I am a very clear resource. Now, if someone close to UDIG calls me and says, would you come in and help us? I'll call the CEO, Andy, and which I've done before. And Andy so-and-so wants to work with me, but I'm not going to do it unless you give me permission. And the last time that happened, actually, Andy said, great. He's a wonderful CEO. Just love him. But I'm an intangible resource. I'm a strategy consultant. I'm a culture consultant. I'm a brand consultant. And so oftentimes those things are considered to be intangible resources. But so many of the supermarkets, it's just all the same products. It's Dave's Killer Bread. There was a time when Dave's Killer Bread was only in 1 or 2 supermarkets. Now it's everywhere. I mean, I can get Dave's Killer Bread at Walmart. I can get it at Food Lion. As a matter of fact, the Food Lion display and the Walmart display are much better than the Publix display. I don't think I can get it at Wegmans. I don't think Wegmans has Dave's Killer Bread. Maybe it does, but I haven't been able to find it. So the resource similarity then says, God, in supermarkets, we got so many of the same resources that we got to find resources that are just going to be us, just going to be us. And so wherever, in the case of Five Guys, wherever we get the potatoes, hopefully we're not going to have to share that potato manufacturer with another burger joint that we actually compete with. So when we think about competing with, then we start thinking about market commonality. And market commonality refers to the number of markets of which a firm and a competitor are jointly involved. So the top 5 supermarkets in America consistently, actually Trader Joe's is one of them. There's another firm in Texas called H-E-B, which nobody knows about unless you live in Texas, which is my all-time favorite supermarket. You got Publix in the list, you got Wegmans in the list. And in terms of Publix and Wegmans, oh yeah, you love H-E-B. So why do you like H-E-B? What is it about H-E-B?
H-E-B is just like so huge. They literally have clothes, they have made to order food, snacks, and 100 gas station pumps. They literally have everything you could ask for all in one spot.
And it's a really nice experience when you go in there, right? I mean, it's a really nice experience.
It's so clean. It's so inviting. Everybody's so cool. I love it.
That's right. So thank you for that. So H-E-B though stays in Texas, and they are warriors. I mean, and companies are afraid to go into Texas to compete against them. So you're not going to see H-E-B, at least I don't think anytime soon, try to come to Richmond, Virginia, or try to go to Atlanta. Now, the two companies who are also in that top 5 list, Wegmans out of Rochester, New York, went up north. I think they're done going up north, and now they're coming south. And then their best friends, their BFFs in the supermarket industry was Publix, and Publix is going north. And so here in the Richmond market, we were the first market in the United States where Wegmans and Publix has clashed. And now Publix is going farther north, Wegmans is going farther south. So there's commonality. But in terms of Publix and in terms of Wegmans, Whole Foods has competed against them both. We got Whole Foods in town, of course. Kroger's competed against them both. Walmart's competed against them both. So Walmart, Kroger, Food Lion knew better what to expect between those two than in some ways they knew from each other. So why am I talking about this? So this notion of competitive advantage even becomes more important when you're competing against these players. So you got to know your position. You got to know your identity. If you walk into Publix and you walk into Wegmans, there is no question there's a difference between them. But yet there's some value chain, or there's activity sub differences as well. And then when you just ask a broad question of what supermarkets out there are best customer service, Wegmans and Publix automatically get put in that top 5, even though they're going to do it in a different way. What do I mean? Publix will take your groceries out to the car, and they're happy to do it. Wegmans will hem and haw. You might be able to get a Wegmans associate to do it for you, but they ain't going to want to do it. Not always, but Publix will take you to the product if you ask for it. Where is it? I don't know where it is. Where is it? Let me take you to the product, sir. They don't do it as consistently as Chick-fil-A says, my pleasure, but they do a great job with it. So it is my humble belief, actually, that Publix customer service actually is higher than Wegmans, but Wegmans in-store experience up until all this Instacart stuff and COVID was better, even though I think now Wegmans customer experience is getting back to where it needed to be. So when you're competing in similar markets and you have a lot of similarity in terms of resources, your brand has to be somehow different and compelling. So either you're going to do it on price, or you're going to do it on the value chain. So where the rubber hits the road, what makes you and me ultimately fall in love with brands, wait for it, is the value chain. So it's the sequence of activities that your brand, the people, performs, designs, produces, sells, delivers, and supports its product and its services, called the value chain. In turn, your value chain is part of your larger value system, which translate to your brand promises, your brand attributes. And again, case of Chick-fil-A, fast and friendly, great consistent food, family atmosphere. In case of Patagonia, build the best product, highest quality, cause no unnecessary harm, going to source only earth-friendly environmental ingredients for your products, and then inspire others to do the same. So whatever you do has to ultimately link up to how you're trying to position at a high level. And that's alignment, guys. And so for startups, you oftentimes will have a hypothesis in terms of how you want to position your brand and who you think you're going to appeal to. It's a hypothesis. It's a hunch. And then you get some investors or you self-fund it and you go to market. And then you often find, I would say, the great majority of the time, entrepreneur startup people find out, oh, what the heck was I thinking? And then they have to recalibrate. And hopefully by recalibrating, they're able to hit it. So you're able to drive revenue in and enough revenue to keep yourself going so you can stay alive. What happens for a lot of brands, they have this hunch, this notion of hypothesis, and then they get 9 months in and they run out of money. And so they have to shut it down. And that's essentially what happens for startups. You have a hunch, your hunch is out of, it's nowhere near what you thought it was going to be. So you recalibrate, and hopefully you got enough money coming in to keep you solvent. If not, you're out of business. So the best brands, the brands that are able to drive performance to a high level, are always adding value to the customer along their value chain. So think Chick-fil-A, think about those two little pickles, think about My Pleasure, think about Five Guys, think about the customization, think about the potatoes, right? And the farming family that creates the potatoes for them or produces the potatoes for them, and think about the big bag greasy fries. Not for everybody. For those of you who are, really health conscious and you don't consume any fats or trans fats, Five Guys, it's all right. It's okay. But for some, Five Guys is their luxury. It's their, it's their reward for working really hard this week. And so if your value chain requires a large amount of investment to create on the part of the brand, that you got to get that back in terms of what you charge. So if we think about Lexus, and you go to Lexus and to get your oil changed, well, I can go 10 minutes from here and get my oil change for $32. I think 32, 33, something like that. 20-minute wait max. Never have waited more than 30, sometimes less. Boom. I mean, there's sometimes, my car will be outside and they're finishing up bringing it in. They got a paper right there for me to read. I'll read the paper. By the time I'm finished the paper, boom, here it is. Here's your car, boom, and I'm on my way. 31, 32, 33 bucks, something like that. I'm sure there's some that do it cheaper than that. You go to Lexus to get your oil changed. You pull up, you have a concierge. Oh, hello, Mr. Kelly. How are you today? How's your car doing? Let me escort you inside and I'll introduce you to your service representative, Pierre or whatever. And so the concierge takes your car and you wave goodbye and you get your service person who will sit there and say, okay, you've got your appointment to get your oil changed. Are you sure there's nothing else we can do? Do you want us to check your wipers? Oh, okay, check the wipers. What about, you're at 130,000. We recommend this. Okay, why don't you check that? So all of a sudden they're starting to upsell you a little bit more. The dude at the little minute, thing, the oil, he ain't ups, maybe a little bit here or there, but ain't gonna be like the Lexus. And then you finalize it. And then he goes, let me take you to your the car that we're going to give you today while we're working on your car. So even if I just said no and exhibited a lot of discipline, I think the oil change still would have been 60 bucks, 70 bucks, whatever. And so that $40 difference that I'm willing to pay at Lexus is value for me. Well, what's the value? The real value is time. That I don't want to have to wait. I need to come into school. I need to go to one of my clients and I get a brand new Lexus with 300 miles and it's got that fresh leather smell to it. And oh, by the way, I'm driving it thinking, dang, this is really a nice ride. Maybe it's time for me to get a new car. And then, I finish my class and supposed to be there at 7. But my class goes to 6:45 and, so, oh gosh, there's no way I'm going to get it back by 7. So I keep it. And then next thing, I'm going out to dinner and that that car they gave me and I have it back to them tomorrow morning. No problem, Mr. Kelly. Here's your bill for $400, but all the other stuff that they ended up doing. That's value chain for you. You might be saying to yourself, Professor, you're freaking me out. Why would you do that? Well, at my age, time is important. I have you, I have my other students, and I have my clients. And so, my schedule, my life is pretty much nonstop. I take Saturdays off, I work on my farm, and then I'm back at it on Sundays. And so value chain is everything, guys. Think about it, whether it's your iPhone or whether it's a particular product like Tide laundry detergent, or it's Popeyes, or wherever it is, there's something that you really like about the product and or service that's being provided to you. Could be a flavor component of a particular product. Sometimes people tell me at Chick-fil-A, one of the things they love the most about Chick-fil-A is the sauce. The sauces, the taste of the sauces that you get, I guess, with your chicken nuggets or something. I don't give a rip about that. Just give me ketchup. I do like Texas Pete. I like the hot sauce. That's it. I don't get the other stuff. Same thing with Burger Batch. People like all these crazy tasting condiments that you get to dip your French fries in. That's cool. That's not necessarily value for me, but it's value for them. But there might be other things at Burger Batch that I really like. So The value chain has to support the brand's competitive advantage and the brand positioning. Underline that. The value chain must support the brand's competitive advantage and brand position, or else don't do it. Don't do it, because it doesn't fit. It's not right. You're wasting your money. And so that's why, going back, what is it that your customers love about you that's so, so important? So I've been talking about them. My pleasure. My pleasure, my pleasure, my pleasure. This is an element of the value chain at Chick-fil-A. So during the height of COVID, this is the value chain right by my house, by my farm. And so I took this picture, and so we know fast and friendly, great consistent food, family atmosphere. Didn't go in. So family atmosphere wasn't that important to me on this particular day. Not at all. Now, I had my little 3.5-year-old grandson over yesterday. He loves Chick-fil-A. So if I ever go to Chick-fil-A, it's going to be nice with him, and he's going to feel comfortable in there, I hope, etc. But from a timeliness standpoint, the question is it performed in the promised amount of time? In the case of Chick-fil-A, the answer is yes. Courtesy, performed cheerfully. Consistency, giving all customers similar experiences each time. Convenience, very accessible. Completeness, fully serviced as required. And accurate, performance correctly done each time. I had a couple of times in a row where I got the wrong thing from Chick-fil-A over this past summer. Didn't call up and complain, but came home a little frustrated. And even there were a couple of times when I thought I waited longer than I should have. So you're not going to be perfect every element, every single time. But, think about it as, if you got enough positive stuff that's going on, positive value chain components, if they greatly outweigh the negative experiences, chances are you're still going to stay in love with the brand, and you're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. So these are around the service quality dimensions. So again, with Chick-fil-A, so this was actually a year ago, September. Transaction time, 2 minutes, 43 seconds. I think they want you in and out within 5-6 minutes. I got 2 my pleasures from this dude and the person giving me my food. The food was very tasty. Surroundings, look at the surroundings. Remember that Kmart picture I had, I showed you? Remember the bathtub metaphor? Remember how disgusting that Kmart looked from the outside? Look at this. They spend money having somebody clean this, keep this area clean. There ain't no garbage anywhere around here, and there never is when I go in there. And the dude was put together, right? So my expectations, which are very high for Chick-fil-A, were met in that regard. Nothing really floored me that it was up and beyond the call of duty, but for Chick-fil-A, it was a very high standard that they create, which means oftentimes that high performing brands who have incredibly high service standards, they got to jump through hoops every single day to keep it going. So as you know, and you've studied Patagonia, they were my favorite brands. I got that coat right there that dude's wearing, $279. You may think, Professor, you're crazy. You're going to Lexus to get your oil changed and you're buying a coat like this. You're crazy. Well, guys, I go to Boston every 3 months. And so I'm going to be going in December, and then I go again in March. Boston's cold in December and they're cold in March. But sometimes, it is not rainy or snowy, but the great majority of the time it is. So I don't want to wear the coat on the plane, because then I'm going to start getting a panic attack from all the heat. I get claustrophobic when I'm on a plane. I never wear socks. I take off my shoes, and typically I just have my t-shirt, and I wear a very loose fitting pair of athleisure pants. But this jacket right here, guys, I can bundle it up into this little ball, and I can put it into my suitcase. And then when I get to Boston and it's snowing like crazy, I can zip it up, open it, zip, pull it out, put it on. And then within a matter of a minute or two, you would never know I had pulled it up. I mean, it is just amazing. I love it. So when you think about Chick-fil-A or you think about Five Guys, then you think about Patagonia. Three different concepts, but Chick-fil-A and Five Guys are both retail food. For product quality dimensions, then it's the operating characteristics, it's the features, special characteristics, the flexibility, durability, conformance, serviceability. If that coat rips, you can send it to Patagonia to get it fixed. You don't have to buy a new one. The aesthetics, it looks beautiful as far as I'm concerned. And the quality is very, very high quality. So I love it. So now you look at part of the value chain component is they have these worn wear mobile sales and repair units that circulate throughout the United States. So look at that lady on the left. She's got a sewing machine out. And so that dude looks about my age. He's there. He's in his flip-flops and his shorts. And so she's fixing something for him. And then all these other people are, kind of in line or leaving stuff off. And so this worn wear mobile sales and repair unit is part of what you get when you purchase a Patagonia product, or maybe even get it at a flea market. And you get it and it needs a little bit of repair, so you just bring it in here. That's part of their value chain. And it's the thing I love about Patagonia. What Patagonia is about, even though it's over $1 billion in revenue now, it's really about trying to simplify your life. And that is that, we've got, I don't know why, I've got so many darn socks. Very rarely do I wear socks anymore. I had to wear socks, to my mother-in-law's funeral in June. And God, guys, I don't know when the last time I wore socks. Other than that, I don't wear them. I go to clients. I have really nice black shoes, but I don't wear socks with them. And I know some people think I'm a little weird, but I don't like wearing socks. And even in the wintertime, I've got my Adidas. I don't even know what you call them. They're not flip-flops like that guy's wearing, but but I wear them, and I'll wear them out even if it's snowing, as long as no accumulation of snow. See that guy on the right, bottom right, with the black t-shirt and the green shorts? That's what I got, something like that. So this is value chain. And it's really an important component. So when we think about then the financials, the standards of performance, what's the firm's profitability? This is the 10K. You're going to tell me about that for Lowe's as well as your group projects. How much shareholder value does the firm create? So, if it's a publicly held company, is the stock price appreciating, or are you getting dividends? And then how much economic value does the firm ultimately generate? So when we think about profitability, you want to be able to assess the firm's financial performance, and then you want to compare it to competitors. What's the industry average? And so when you think about comparing Lowe's to Home Depot, what's the industry average? And how does Lowe's compare against Home Depot? And you're going to tell me in your paper. You got standardized accounting metrics. You got your 10K. For those of you who are not in accounting or finance, that's the public statement. You can go to the 10K to find out how the brand performed financially, as well as other things in there. And then, of course, profitability ratios, return on invested capital, return on equity, return on assets, return on revenue. So these are the things I'm interested in. Revenue, of course, top line, net income, or EBITDA, whatever the organization uses, I'm interested in. You don't have to go into every single thing when you do the Lowe's project, but I need to know how they're performing, particularly as it compares to Home Depot. So the value creation to the shareholder is stock, right? money provided for an equity share, total return to shareholders, stock appreciation, plus dividends, and then market cap, which is the dollar value of total shares outstanding. So that's number of outstanding shares times share price. And we've gone over a trillion dollars. I guess Apple's over a trillion now. Microsoft might have been, Amazon. Those are the three biggies right now that are fighting it out. So when we think about economic value creation, ultimately it is the primary aim of every business entity. But it's creating value for customers to help sell products and services, creating value for shareholders in the form of increases in stock, ensures the future availability of investment capital. So when you think about the stock market going down, like it has, I don't know where it is today. And what is today? Wednesday. So I think it went down Monday, I think. I don't know where it was yesterday, but it's been down. So people pull money out. So they might have bought in for $25 a share, and they ended up selling at 50. So they're getting their profit. They're squeezing out their profit, and then of course you got to pay. You got to pay on that. In the form of tax. So, but if you lose a lot of, if your stock price comes down, then all of those dollars were available for investment capital to fund operations. And so when we think about value creation, integrate, it's define, create, deliver, and sustain value, for those individuals who are interested in it. I mean, I've got my little Pixel here that phone, everything else I own is Apple. And I've pretty much now decided that I'm going to go ahead and get my first iPhone, believe it or not. And I've always been an Android guy and I've loved my Pixels, but this Pixel has really disappointed me. And it didn't at first. It just almost seems like it's just starting little by little to give way after 2.5 years, I think, which to me is unacceptable. And the new reviews for the Pixel, I think it's number 9 out of 10 in terms of the feedback that it's getting from the users. So plus all my families that got an iPhone, and I miss out on all sorts of these little picture things that they do. So when we think about a self-checkout pod, then the question becomes, how does installing a self-checkout pod create economic value to customers and shareholders? So for customers, the economic value is, potentially around time. And so the value is I can get through these, I don't have to wait, and I can get in and out, particularly if you got like 10 items or 8 items and everybody else has got 20, 30 items that are in the other checkout lane. So the economic value to me is the fact that I'm saving time, and we're a time-starved society. And then to the shareholder, it is the fact that if the self-checkout pod, again, this is one of them, but there's typically 4 or 6, but if there's 4, you can save about 108 cashier hours a week. Let's just say it used to be $8 an hour. Now I think it's $15 an hour. So if it's $8 an hour, you're saving $800 a week in labor times 52. So you're saving about $40,000 a year. So it's a little over a 2-year payback. But now with the wage going up and more organizations paying $15 an hour, and the fact that these self-checkouts are still down around $100,000, it all of a sudden, guys, becomes a no-brainer. So my prediction is, particularly since there's a lot of shortage of help, you're going to see more and more organizations invest in self-checkout. So whoever is making these self-checkout pods better get their act together if they already haven't, because they're going to get, in this next capital budget year, 2022, their companies right now are putting in a sizable amount of money into the purchase of self-checkout pods. 100%. Guarantee it. They're doing that right now. And so their capital budget will be for 2022. They're probably already calling up the company that makes these things, making their order. And because they have to, because there's not enough people to be hired as cashiers. And we as consumers are getting used to them. And you're already seeing it at Whole Foods. You go into that new Whole Foods down by campus. I can't believe the amount of self-checkouts it has. Well, why? Because Amazon is a master at efficiency. And this is what Amazon is doing. It's making Whole Foods become a more efficient organization, to the point where that Whole Foods is a bare bones Whole Foods. It ain't too fancy. I mean, it's still really nice. And I know the store manager who runs it. He used to work for me, but it's not the typical Whole Foods experience. For example, what you get out in Short Pump. So the self-checkout creates economic value to customers through efficiency and saving time, and to shareholders in terms of return on invested capital. So if we start then to even look at the financial implication more, let's look at firm B there. Same cost. Okay, so look at firm A, look at firm B. The cost, COGS, cost of goods, whatever their cost footprint is, let's say they're both $400. And then we're looking at the idea around perceived customer value, or in that regard. What we're finding, and there's and firm B is focused on superior differentiation. Remember the far right? Theoretically, what it says is the competitive advantage is going to be able to generate an additional $200. So going back to the Porter model, the broad and the narrow on the right side, if you remember, differentiated. If you're able to do it and do it right, then this is the P&L that I was referring to, theoretically. And so on the other side, then, if we look at total perceived consumer benefits is firm D, and I'm talking about C, but C creates more economic value by keeping their price down, the cost. So the cost is 300 on firm C, and it's 600 on firm D. And so the cost savings is $300. Again, this is like a Walmart in this regard. So this is a oopsie. So if we go back, this is a Wegmans right here, firm B, and then over here, your firm C is a Walmart. So going back then, in terms of where we started, when we look at all the burger places, you can go in and out at McDonald's for $6.50. You're not going to be able to go in and out at Five Guys for $6.50. It's going to be more like close to $12. For a burger batch, it's going to be closer to 20, which is the same as probably Carytown burgers and fries, unless you get water. There's always a formula to that. I had Burger IM. These guys just went down. They came in as a new entrant and then went down pretty quick. So it goes back all the way to how you're trying to position yourself and what are your